Okay, we sound good? All right. Hi. Welcome to the last event of the day for Democracy Days. My name is Paul Roesler. I teach political science here. And just want to make a pitch for the rest of the week. On Wednesday and Thursday, we have more events. So tomorrow we start off with Moms Demand Action, which is an interest group that actually tries to change, they met these moms trying to change gun control laws and how they do that, and so it's kind of exciting. This is an ordinary group of people trying to change the laws, so that's kind of neat at 10 o'clock. Then there's a school to prison pipeline, another fantastic panel with a lot of fantastic guests at 11:30. And then at 1 o'clock, it says, 1 o'clock, there's a discussion on why unions are important from various unions here at the college, are talking about why unions. And then Thursday, we start off at 10 a.m. with articles on the Article 5 convention, which is an unusual approach to changing the Constitution, so that's kind of a neat approach. And then at 11:30, DEI and healthcare through occupational therapy. And then 1 o'clock, we end the Democracy Days with a protest music as Democracy in Action. So if you can make it, 2 more days. Welcome to the last one of today, but we got 2 more days of events. So to get people a few minutes, I'm going to start this. I have several video clips on this, so I'm going to start the clip, and hopefully by the time this is done, people will be here.
Well, it sounded like you were asking for him to come up with 11,000 votes.
No, and you know that. You're terrible when you say this. You're off to a bad start, because what I said was very simple. I got cheated in this election.
He told you
and
didn't.
All I need is like 11,000, whatever the number was.
Brad Raffensperger, who's a Republican, said you didn't get cheated.
Well, he said that, but...
The most senior lawyers in your own administration and on your campaign told you that after you'd lost more than 60 legal challenges, that it was over. Why did you ignore them and decide to listen to a new outside group?
Because I didn't respect them.
You'd hired them.
Sure, but that doesn't mean, you hire them, you never met these people, you get a recommendation, they turn out to be rhinos or they turn out to be not so good.
So, are you saying you needed those votes in order to win? Are you acknowledging you didn't win?
I'm not acknowledging, no. I say I won the election.
Okay. Even though, again, your lawyers told you you did not.
No.
Did you, just let me understand.
Some people told me that,
okay.
But many people told me the opposite. And I watched that election, and I thought the election was over at 10 o'clock in the evening.
You were listening to your instincts.
My instincts are a big part of it. That's been the thing that's gotten me to where I am, my instincts.
Were you listening to your lawyer's advice, or were you listening to your own instincts?
I was listening to different people, and when I added it all up, the election was rigged.
Were you calling the shots, though, Mr. President, ultimately?
As to whether or not I believed it was rigged, oh, sure. It was my decision.
Let's talk about potential pardons, because a lot of your supporters are wondering about that. Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio was sentenced to 22 years in jail. Now that you know what the sentence is, 22 years in jail, will you give him a pardon? Will you give other Proud Boys a pardon?
I don't know him.
Will you pardon him?
In Minneapolis, I'd certainly look at it. I'd look at that, and I'd look at all the other people that have suffered, the J6 people.
Okay, welcome back who are here. So there are actually 4 different criminal investigations into Donald Trump, 4 different cases. Georgia 2020 election indictment, the federal election obstruction in D.C. We had the Georgia indictment interference, Florida election federal indictment for mishandling classified documents, and then the New York indictment for falsifying business records. Anyone know what that clip was talking about? Which one of these 4 he was talking about? Had to do with January 6th, right? And actually, you could argue that was both the Georgia and the federal election for obstruction and the first 2. So the first 2 relate to that clip. He was interviewed just a couple days ago on Meet the Press, so that's why I pulled that up. So here are the 4 cases. 2 are federal. The January 6th and the classified documents case, and 2 are state. The New York and Georgia are both state charges. How does that work? We have a federal system. What does that mean? We have a federal system. What does federalism mean? What does it mean that we have state charges and we have federal charges? Yes? I'm sorry, say it a little louder. I'm sorry. Well, no, that's not the issue between state and federal. The Constitution gives some powers, some responsibilities to the states, and gives some powers and responsibilities to the national government. And so we have state laws. So, for example, not to put anybody on the spot here, does anybody tried marijuana? Okay. Is it legal in Missouri? It is now, sort of. It's a weird combination because it's actually still considered a Schedule I drug federally, so it's kind of a weird. So under federal law, it's actually not legal, but in Missouri law, it is. And Biden has basically said he's not going to. He's going to instruct his attorney general not to prosecute federal charges in states where it's legal, such as Missouri. So we have state laws and we have federal laws. So Trump is accused of violating federal law, national law, in these first two cases. And he's accused of violating state laws in both New York and Georgia in those two cases. Does that make sense? So there's state prosecutors in these two cases, and there are federal prosecutors in those two cases. Hopefully that makes sense. If something doesn't make sense, because I'm going to try to briefly talk about all four cases, please raise your hand and let me know, because if I'm not making sense, if I'm saying something that you don't get, I guarantee you there's other people in the audience that have the same questions. So please let me know. Okay.
A variety of charges, potentially even for former President Trump, who has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing.
There is a substantial likelihood of some real criminal or possible criminal liability here.
There's nothing wrong with saying that, that you've recalculated.
Well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have is the data you have is wrong.
In a stunning phone call this weekend, first obtained by the Washington Post, President Trump pressures Georgia's Republican Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, to find enough votes to overturn President-elect Joe Biden's win.
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes.
That was in Georgia. That was the Georgia case. So what happened in Georgia, and I'm going to get to this in a minute, and I'll mention this a little bit more now, but we'll get to it next slide. The way elections work in America is that every state has their own election. So Georgia had an election, Missouri had an election in 2020. So the presidential elections are a state-by-state operation. So in Georgia, Trump is accused of trying to undermine the legal outcome of the Georgia election. So who won the state of Georgia in terms of votes? Which candidate, Joe Biden or Donald Trump? Joe Biden won. Anyone know by how many votes he won Georgia by? 11,779. What was Trump asking the Georgia Secretary of State to find? One more vote, 11,780 more votes, so that he would win Georgia. Okay. So, by the way, is Raffensperger, what party does he belong to? He's a Republican. Which candidate did he support in the 2020 election? Donald Trump. Which candidate did he give money to? Donald Trump. So this is a Republican who endorsed Donald Trump and gave money to Donald Trump and helped his campaign. But when Donald Trump said, I want you to find 11,780 more votes so that I could win, he said no. In fact, he recorded the phone call to kind of back up his claims. So that was actually one of the reasons why you see a criminal investigation in Georgia is because the Republican Secretary of State was feeling pressured from Donald Trump, feeling like he was trying to get him to find new votes, and he recorded that conversation. So very, very close election. Now, what do you normally do? If you have a close election, what would you want to have happened? I'm sorry? Count them again. Recounts. Did they do that? Yes. They recounted them, they machine recounted them, and they hand recounted them. Guess what? Did it matter? No. Okay? It was unlikely to matter. I talk about this in my American government class. The 2000 election between Bush v. Gore in Florida, Al Gore asked for a statewide recount. A lower judge ruled that the state Supreme Court ruled that you had to have a statewide recount. And the Supreme Court ruled no. And the reason why that might have mattered, because Al Gore was behind Al Gore was behind George W. Bush by about 530 votes out of about 6 million votes cast. Out of 5 million votes cast, so that's possible. You could see 500 votes swing out of 6 million. People screw up in their ballots. You're not going to see 11,780 votes swing. Very unlikely. And they didn't. And did they find a few more votes? Yeah. When they went through, the machines don't always work. I don't know if teachers ever do Scantron stuff. Sometimes the Scantron screws up. So yeah. So you might find 200 or 300 or 400 more votes, but you're not going to find 11,000. And they didn't. So they did actually 3 recounts. And again, Joe Biden won every time. So the other thing that's interesting, and by the way, they also have what's alternate electors. Basically, one thing that Trump also did with this movement was to create alternate slate of electors. Well, how does that work? Well, every state, these are all the electors from every state, and here's who won each state. Every state has their own number of electors. And for the most part, there are a couple exceptions. We're going to ignore them, just pretend we're all the same. What happens? Who determines? Okay, go back. Joe Biden won Georgia by 11,780 votes. How many of Georgia's 16 electors did he get? All of them. Yes. So the way our electoral system works, it's a state-by-state race. The presidential system works. So this is why it's such a big deal. Because you win the state by 1 vote, you get the whole shooting match. You get everything. You get all 16 votes. That's how, by the way, that's how Donald Trump won in 2016. Because he won a bunch of swing states by just a handful of votes. He won, I think, Michigan by 20,000 votes. He won Wisconsin by 10,000 votes. He won a couple other swing states with very close margins. And because you win it by 1 vote, you get all the electors. That's how he was able to beat Hillary Clinton. Even though Hillary Clinton got more national votes, that doesn't matter. How many votes you get overall doesn't matter in our system. It's how many electoral votes you get, how many states you win. Okay, that's why he was focusing on, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, the swing states that were relatively close. Although the only 2 states that were really close, and this time around were Wisconsin was sort of close. I think it was like 30,000 votes in Wisconsin. But Michigan was like 130,000. So the only really close votes were Georgia and Arizona. And ironically, neither one of them, if he'd gotten both, it wouldn't have mattered. Trump still would have lost or would have won, even if they hadn't gone. So the way elections are run is it's a state-by-state election process. And in Georgia, again, which party did the Secretary of State belong to? He was a Republican. And Arizona, I can't remember the Arizona Secretary, was also a Republican. So 2 of the states that Donald Trump was most complaining about were run by Republicans. Raffensperger, the guy who secretly recorded Donald Trump's phone call, was a Republican who voted for Trump, who supported Trump, endorsed Trump. He was just unwilling to lie about the election results because that's fraud. He was basically unwilling to go to jail for trying to rig the election results. So every state, it's a state-by-state race. Every state has their own Secretary of State. We didn't have them this year. I feel kind of bad. And past years we brought a county election officer, Kurt Barr, who's come in and talked about how voting works, and he explains how the whole thing works, how we do recounts and all that stuff, and he's really good. Maybe next year I'll try to bring in Kurt Barr again and talk about how election works in St. Charles County. He's really good. So it's certified, every state certifies them. So there's a winner, you had 3 recounts in Georgia, I think you had a recount in Arizona, the state certified it, and those electors then vote in December. What Trump was accused of doing in this is that he was accused of trying to, in the Georgia case, was trying to get a slate of electors his slate of electors. So basically the 16 electors, since Biden won Georgia, the 16 electors were all Biden picked. They were all Democrats. So the 16 Democrats, of course, were going to vote for Biden, right? Trump wanted to have 16 Republicans in their place. And it was a system to try to make that happen. So again, he was told by everybody around, all the experts, his lawyers, Republicans, as well as Democrats, that he lost, the election was over, and Biden won the election 306 to 232. So this is actually the vote tally. This vote tally doesn't mean anything in American politics. 81 million versus 74 million, it means nothing. This is the number that matters, 306 to 232, which I think was exactly the number that Trump beat Hillary with, if I'm not mistaken. I have to look and see the historically, but I think it was the same exact number, ironically, right? So what happens? So on the first Tuesday after a second Wednesday in December, the electors in every state capital get together and they vote. They said, here's the electors from the state of Missouri. By the way, how did Missouri go in 2020? Well, Trump. So the 10 electors in Missouri voted for Donald Trump on the Tuesday in December, okay? And then all those votes are tallied on January 6th. On January 6th, Congress gets all the reports from all the electors across the states, each state, and then the Vice President, Mike Pence, presides over that event. Okay, that's what January 6th was all about. When you hear about January 6th, that's the final step in declaring Joe Biden the president. Congress simply counts the ballots. So Missouri has 10 so if you go back, 10 for Missouri, Illinois had 20 for Biden, Texas had 38 for Trump. By the way, why are they different numbers? It's based on population, yes, exactly. So bigger states like California, Texas, Florida, New York, they have more population. That's where they have more electors. So I'm going to show you a clip in a minute, but there's the gallows they built. And during that day, the rioters struck. I'm going to show you it's a powerful video. I was debating whether to show it to you because it's really powerful. It's a synopsis of what happened on January 6, 2021. If you have PTSD, you're welcome to step out for a minute because it's very powerful. But these are clips of it. But the pro-Trump rally, they brought a noose and rope to hang Mike Pence. Why do they want to hang Mike Pence? Mike Pence, by the way, who is Mike Pence? Donald Trump's own vice president, okay? His own vice president. Why would they want to hang Donald Trump's vice president? Because Mike Pence was saying, no, look, Biden won. There's no doubt about it. I'm going to sign off on the votes. I have no legal authority to change that. And so there was a rally. And apparently during the attack, Trump was asked, you got to do something. They want to hang Mike Pence. And his response was basically, maybe Mike Pence should be hung. Okay? That was Donald Trump, the President of the United States, about his own vice president when all this was happening. What do I mean by all this is happening? I think...
So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength.
This is January 6th.
And you have to be strong.
Stand up and fight. Stand up and hold your representatives accountable.
But if we're right, a lot of them will go to jail. So let's have trial by combat.
But we're going to try and give our Republicans, the weak ones, because the strong ones don't need any of our help, we're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take back our country. So we're going to walk down to the Capitol, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
Houses of Congress were in session as violent protesters smashed and bashed their way in, ripping off heavily fortified doors and climbing through windows. Vice President Pence and all 100 senators were whisked to safety as members of the mob pushed back police, clashing in the Capitol, armed with anything they could find, then entering an inner sanctum of the U.S. government not open to the public since before the pandemic, posing for pictures on the abandoned Senate dais, and with feet on a desk in the office of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, leaving this note, "We will not back down."
Everybody stay down! Get down!
Huddled in the House chamber, members of Congress hid anywhere they could.
Were let in, I think. The police were just saying, I'm not gonna deal with this crap, and they let them in instead of actually stopping them. So you saw the difference there. If you stopped them, you get squashed. Several police officers died the next day or so. One of them had a heart attack. Arguably said had nothing to do with the fact that he was tased and maced and whatever, but his family disagrees, and that that's why he had a heart attack, because he was there. But yeah, there were some police officers did not resist. I think there were some, basically they gave up and said, and let him in, yeah. So it's, at one point, one of the entrances, but that's the infamous footage where they attacked police officers with their own riot shields and whatnot. So this is, you think this is a slam dunk case, right? You had Trump before the event saying, you know, I want you to march onto the Capitol, and I want you to take back our country, those kinds of things. You had Donald Trump Jr., you had Rudy Giuliani, trial by combat. But this is actually not. I argue this may be actually one of the hardest cases to prove, because you have to prove that you intended this to happen. You intended the riot to happen. You intended. So you can't, you have the First Amendment. The Supreme Court is very clear, a lot of protections in the First Amendment. Those who have my American government class know that political speech is the most heavily protected form of speech we have. So if you say something political, it's really hard to stop that. You have free speech, especially with political speech. The trick is you can't incite violence. And so for prosecutors, having those witnesses that show him excited about the violence, that helps. Having his statement after the fact saying that we love you to the violent protesters, that actually helps the prosecutor's case. But this is actually a tough one, because again, free speech is a big right, a big value that Americans have, and so there is a distinction between freedom of speech and inciting a riot. But it's it's a difficult thing to prove. I think there's evidence there. I think the prosecutor obviously thought there was enough evidence to bring the trial, but you got to have 12 jurors buy into it. That's actually, we're getting ahead of myself, one of the biggest problems with all of this. You've got to have 12 jurors who agree to convict. And that's going to be a hardest thing. And this is actually, even though this is the most damning thing, these protesters attacking the Capitol, threatening members of Congress, beating up police officers. I mean, I didn't show you the whole clip, but there's tons of footage where police officers were just brutally beaten. And there's several have still to this day have PTSD from the response of that. So, but I think there is evidence there. I think it's there, but that's a difficult case to prove.
In the new charges, the special counsel alleging Mr. Trump sought a cover-up to conceal classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago home by deleting surveillance video. Now charging a new defendant, Mar-a-Lago property manager Carlos de Oliveira, with 2 obstruction counts and with making false statements to the FBI. In the indictment, prosecutors say on June 23rd last year, the day after the government subpoenaed surveillance video from his home, the former president spoke by phone with de Oliveira for 24 minutes. The next day, Mr. Trump's personal aide, Walt Nauta, who's also been charged, allegedly changed his travel to go to Florida. On June 25th, prosecutors say, Nauta and de Oliveira looked at surveillance video in a Mar-a-Lago security booth and walked through a tunnel with flashlights pointing out cameras. 2 days later, de Oliveira spoke with an IT staffer identified as Employee 4, who told him the server retained camera footage for 45 days. De Oliveira allegedly saying the boss wanted the server deleted. The employee responded he would not know how to do that, and that he did not believe he would have the rights to do that. De Oliveira allegedly insisting that that's what, quote, the boss wanted, asking, what are we going to do?
So this is the Florida charge. Again, this is another federal charge against Florida. What is Trump accused of in this case? Okay, actually, he's not accused. He did have classified documents, but he's actually not accused. The criminal charges against him are not simply possessing them, but what did he refuse to do? To return them. So, anyone know what a subpoena is? Subpoena. He was subpoenaed. What does that mean? Is you have to do something. So sometimes you are subpoenaed to show up in court to testify. Sometimes they're going to subpoena your phone records. Sometimes they're going to subpoena And what they did is they subpoenaed all classified documents in his possession. So what happened here is that Trump was subpoenaed for classified documents, and then he was asked for classified, actually for about a year or so, the archives asked for classified documents. They found some were missing and said, we think you might have some more. It dragged on and on and on. Eventually, Trump turned over some documents, but the archives were still missing. It's like, there are still other documents out there we think you have. And so please turn over all documents. During that period, there was a witness that said that documents were being moved around inside the Trump Mar-a-Lago compound. And were being moved. And then FBI agents came, but right before they came, there were documents moved around, and they were showed, here's where your documents are. Here's the only documents you can look at are these boxes right here. And so they took those boxes away, and they still said, no, I don't think this is all the documents. But when they were there, and here's the thing that I think this is what set off this whole motion. When they were there to search those documents, they noticed security cameras. And they said, security cameras. So, because one of their inside moles told them that they had moved the documents beforehand. They saw the security cameras. What'd they do? They subpoenaed the footage from the security cameras. Say, what would that show? If they were kept for 45 days, what would that show? Whether or not those documents were moved right before the FBI showed up for the search. So that's what really set all this thing in motion, was that they noticed the security cameras. The next day, Trump calls his fixer, and he flies down secretly. He doesn't tell anybody. He secretly goes down to Florida. He meets with various people, looks at the video cameras, sees where they are, and is worried. Then he asks the IT person to do what? Delete the security footage. Even though he has a subpoena demanding that security footage, okay? The IT guy's response was what? Liberals are making him out to be a hero. I'm not necessarily sure that's the correct response, but that's okay. He can play the hero. What did he say? I don't have the rights to that footage. From an IT perspective, anyone IT person? All right, Nick, what does that mean? It
means you might have access to delete and change footage.
Right, the media says it's because he's a good guy, he refused to delete the footage. But my interpretation of that is like he didn't have physical access to delete the footage because he did not have the rights to do certain things. And that's how I read it, but the media is saying he's a hero for standing up to Donald Trump. I don't really think that was the issue. That's not how I read it, but that's how the media is treating him. And I forgot his name now, but he's now officially testified that, yes, he did all this stuff. So now it's there. So in this case, this is a slam dunk, right? You had the subpoena, you saw the record, the travel records of Olivier. They go down there. The manager, you saw them walk. In fact, there's video footage of him walking around the compounds, pointing out the cameras. You have a witness saying he was asked specifically to delete the footage under oath. So this is a slam dunk case. This is the easiest case to prove. Because did he have these classified documents? Yes. Even after he was asked to turn them over? Yes. Even after the FBI came to his Mar-a-Lago, he said, this is everything. His lawyer swore an affidavit saying, this is every classified document. Well, was it? No. They found more when they did the raid a few weeks later. So this is all, it's pretty slam dunk. The one thing that makes me a little nervous about this case is that, because it's obvious. Okay, so it's not a question of him having the documents. In fact, I think it's on here. But it's because that's not, honestly, I think that's on here later on. Who else had classified documents when they shouldn't have had classified documents? Joe Biden did. Mike Pence did, right? Does that happen? Yeah, but what's the difference between what Mike Pence and Joe Biden did than what Trump did? they gave them back, okay? They said, oh shit, I have these documents. They called the FBI and said, here, please collect them, and the FBI came. In fact, the FBI then said, hey, we want to search your home and find more. And he said, sure, search away. And they did find a few more documents. They found them next to his Corvette, or what was it, Corvette? Does he drive? Whatever fancy car, he goes Corvette, yeah, okay. They found him in his garage next to his Corvette. So they did find more. But, there was no pushback, there were no movie, it was like, here are the documents. The other thing, the problem is we don't really know exactly what they were, but we know they involve nuclear secrets. So that's also a big deal. People freak out about that. But honestly, if he had just turned them back in, said when they called, hey, we think you got documents, and if he just said, yeah, you do, here are all the documents, then I think this case would have gone away. Because normally you're not going to go after our former president because he accidentally had some documents. And he turned it back over. You're not going to do that. It's just not going to happen. So this is the easiest case to prove. The trick is the judge who is randomly assigned, which is wild, is a Trump appointee who is, from my perspective, kind of nutty. She had a ruling earlier, and she was slapped down by the courts, her higher-ups, saying, no, this ruling is absolutely bizarre. So this person is a very friendly, pro-Trump friendly judge who Trump had himself appointed. And, so she could guide the case, she could steer the jurors. So this is even though I think this is the easiest case, because it's obvious. We had the video footage of Trump trying to hide this. We have the lawyers lying. I mean, it's very obvious. We have witnesses saying they were asked to do this. So this is the easiest case. But I wonder if the judge can really, how much he can mess with it.
Paul, do you know if they have, or which voter pool or which pool they would be pulling for the jury on this case?
That's another good question, because it would be a Florida jury. It's a federal court, but interestingly enough, they decided to have the jury pool to try the case in Florida. They could have tried it in D.C., which would have been a different jury pool. But Florida jury pool, which is probably going to be much more Trump-friendly. So that's an excellent point as well. And the Georgia case, going back to that question, the Georgia case, there was an attempt by several defense witnesses to move it to a federal court. Because right now it's in Atlanta, that's where the state court is, which Atlanta is a Democratic city in a purple state, but Atlanta, the suburbs are fairly Democratic, and so they wanted to move it to a federal court, which would have more rural areas, and so you get a more favorable jury. The judge refused to do that, saying, no, this is not a federal, this is a state charge, and so they refused to do that. But venue shopping is a really important skill, and so this is a win that effect is in Florida, and it's a win that you have Eileen Cannon, which is she made headlines for some really odd decisions, very pro-Trump decisions. And I think we have one more. Oh, here we go. What about Biden and Pence? So what his big charge is obstruction and willful retention. So whatever you think of Joe Biden and Mike Pence, it's like, how the hell could they take home national? I mean, what are they thinking? How do you do that? They didn't. I mean, the fact that they found him, they turned him over, and it was done. In fact, Joe Biden even said, when they were asked, can we search your home? He said, search away. And so search everything. And I think they found a couple more documents when the FBI searched his home as well. So there was more stuff in there. So that's the issue here. It's not whether you accidentally had some documents, but you refused to turn them over. Trial number 4. This is kind of in my opinion, kind of the least serious case in this regard, because it's about tax fraud. Anyone know who Stormy Daniels is? She's a porn star who had a brief fling with Trump, and it was actually, I believe it was when Melania had just given birth to Barron, thank you. I believe it was just, and so he was at a resort, and he had a brief fling with Stormy. During the 2016 election, she started making noises and saying, hey, I'm thinking about selling my story about the affair to various media outputs. And so instead, what they did was Cohen, the National Enquirer, David Pecker, who's head of the National Enquirer, and other people were friends with Trump, and they said, hey, this gal's shopping stuff around. And so that's when you had Michael Cohen, Trump's attorney, and Rudy Giuliani make an arrangement where they paid her $130,000 cash to basically sign an NDA. Well, that's perfectly legal. Nothing wrong with that. What was illegal about it? Yes? It's not. They claimed it as a business expense. Okay, you cannot claim paying off a porn star is a business expense. Okay, you can't do that. All right. So that's what he's actually being charged with. In fact, he did it in several other occasions. There's Karen McDougal, who actually had a 6-month affair with Trump as well. I'm not sure exactly. I forgot what the time period where that was. But what they ended up doing is the National Enquirer paid her money, and then basically, which is an illegal campaign contribution. You can't do that. You can only, there's a limit how much you can give to a campaign. So basically, it was it was an illegal campaign contribution. So again, these are pretty slam dunk. It's pretty obvious. That's tax fraud. Okay, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of jail time for this thing. I mean, it's like the Hunter Biden thing, right? He was allegedly didn't pay his taxes on time, and then when the IRS asked him, you owe us money, what did he do? He paid it back, plus a fine, plus interest. Okay, I know they want to go send him to jail for 25 years, but no one goes to jail for, if the IRS, if you file your taxes improperly and someone catches you and you pay it, it's a little slap on the wrist. No one ever goes to jail for a long period of time for that. So, and that's why, I mean, I don't think this is, I mean, you could see some jail time here, but it's unlikely. I'm sorry? Oh yeah, so you could see some jail time here, but tax fraud isn't that big of a serious of a crime. But it's still a crime. I mean, it's still a crime. So it's just like, it's very theoretically possible Hunter Biden could see some jail time for that. Probably not much, if any. And it's very possible that Trump could see some jail time for this, but probably not a lot. The other cases are much more serious. So questions about this? Well, can Trump get a fair trial? Right? You've got the most polarizing president, arguably in U.S. history, certainly in modern U.S. history. I mean, who doesn't have an opinion on Donald Trump, right? So can you get 12 jurors to give an honest verdict on this? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm really kind of curious. I don't know if you can get either a conviction or an acquittal in any of these venues. I don't know. Maybe the Florida case, because it's such an obvious slam dunk, you might get a limited conviction. But even then, it's Florida, right? Laura, I think it was one of you guys over here, Laura was like, it's Florida, right? I don't know if you'll get 12 Floridians to convict him on that. So it's going to be really interesting to see that. And if convicted, he probably won't see jail time because he'll appeal, and so it'll be, he probably won't go to jail. Although, if he goes to jail, he can still run for president, right? Eugene Debs in 1920, as a socialist, he got 1 million votes when he ran for president in 1920 from a jail cell. Okay, so you can run for president from jail, no problem. Okay, Eugene Debs did it. Right? So, by the way, I think it's interesting. Eugene Debs was actually convicted for speaking out against the draft. It was a speech issue. He was a socialist who disagreed with the draft. He said it was wrong, and he spoke out against it, and he said we shouldn't have the draft. And the court ruled that he had the intention and effect of obstructing the draft and military recruitment. Well, Trump is being accused of the intention of obstructing the certification of the 2020 election. If you ask most historians, they would say there's no way in hell he can pardon himself. There's absolutely no way. He'll definitely try. If he wins, he will absolutely try to pardon himself. I guarantee it, he will try to pardon himself. But that only helps him in 2 of the cases. Why does it only help him on 2 of the cases? Talk about federalism, yes? Exactly. So again, you can only pardon yourself for federal charges. If he's convicted in state charges, like in Georgia and New York, you can't. Now the governors can pardon him. The Georgia governor, who is a Republican, could pardon him. The New York governor, who's a Democrat, I don't think is going to pardon him. Okay, but that's actually the weakest of the charges. That you might. Again, tax fraud. You're not going to see long prison sentences for tax fraud. So, I mean, I think it's very minimal charge there. But he could. I don't think he can legally do it, but we'll have to see what the Supreme Court says. It'll definitely, if he wins re-election, if he wins in 2024, I don't know. My fellow poli-sci professor, do you know? Have you any thoughts on whether you can pardon yourself?
It's never tried before. A lot of people say it's deeply inappropriate, but the Constitution doesn't really say you can't.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. So he was saying it's inappropriate, but the Constitution doesn't really specifically say one way or the other. Okay, any questions about any of the cases, about what's going on? Yes. Oh, she's got a mic there for you.
Sorry. I know you said that you were interested on how similar the 2 presidents were. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah. Do you think it's more of maybe Trump is trying to copycat what he experienced or what he did?
No, I think Eugene Debs. No, I think he was a socialist. Eugene Debs was a socialist who was opposed to the World War I. He was opposed to U.S. troops being drafted. Called it a cap. Forgot the exact quote. Any historians in here? Something like the war for capitalist oppression or something. I mean, he thought World War I was all about was a bad idea. But no, I think the lesson he may have learned is that he could run. I mean, sure, his lawyer said, yeah, even if convicted, you can still run. And again, there's nothing preventing you from winning if you are convicted. It would be a trip, But and I don't think any jail. I mean, the way our criminal justice system works, you'll have appeals. It'll be probably years before, even if convicted. I don't see him seeing jail time for a while because he'll have appeals and all that stuff. Any other questions or comments? Comments are good. Disagreement is fun. Politics is fun that way, right? You don't have to agree. Yes, in the back. She's got a mic to you.
Are they trying him for each one of the cases all at once, or are they doing it one at a time?
Well, so he was trying. What's the schedule? I'm trying to remember which one is going first. I think the Florida one. You'll have to maybe try to help me remember which one. I think that one's scheduled for March or April. I don't think the New York one's been scheduled. I mean, so it takes a long time and it gets delayed. I think the Georgia one, they wanted to start it this year, but it's being pushed back. And there's a big fight in Georgia, for example. There are so many defendants because the Georgia case is a big conspiracy because they actually had in Georgia, I think, 16 different defendants or co-defendants. It wasn't just Trump. There was 15 other people as well, and it was a conspiracy. And they also took the ballots and the voting machines. They kind of, not kidnapped is the wrong word, but they confiscated this illegal group. Did that illegally. They took the voting machines and try to do various things. So there was an attempt. I think it's still going on for some of the defendants to split themselves off from Trump and have a separate trial because they don't want to be in the same trial as Trump. So I think so that's going to delay everything. So there's nothing set on that trial. So I think my understanding is the Florida trial, I think is set for, I think it's like March. But that can also always get pushed back. And because Trump is trying to push all these back as far as he can, so it's after the election. Because the last thing he wants to do, I mean, he could run for president while on trial or even if convicted. But he doesn't want that to happen. He wants to push all the trial. In fact, his suggested trial date was 2026. Okay, so to make sure all the, that was his, it's like, oh, we should have 2025, 2026. So he's trying to push these cases back, drag them out, because it's at the very least, it's probably, even though it helps him in the Republican primary, in fact, if you look at his numbers, poll numbers, ever since the first indictment, his poll, every time he gets indicted, the Republican approval rating for him goes higher and higher and higher. So now he's got like a 60-point lead over his closest rival, Ron DeSantis. So, I mean, before he had like a 20-point lead, now he's got like a 60-point lead. So this helps him in the primary, in the Republican nomination, but I think it's going to probably, having all this talk during the general election against Joe Biden is going to be damaging for him. So he's trying to push this back. But the only one I think I know is the Florida one that's going ahead, and with the date. But yes.
Yes. The case in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
is, at this time, it's scheduled for March 4th.
March
to begin
4th.
on March 4th, which is the day before Super Tuesday. So I think the scheduling of all of this is going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, but that's not going to hurt him. Super Tuesday is the Republican primary. So, and that's not going to hurt him in the Republican. It's honestly, where it's going to hurt him is in the general election, which will take place in September and October. And that's where I think Trump will have some, so far the indictments. So what does it mean when you're indicted?
Charges have been brought against you by whatever agency or government is.
Right. So a grand jury, typically a grand jury, a group of people have heard evidence and they said, we think there is enough evidence to bring a trial and charge you with, and have a trial. Okay. So the grand jury an indictment is simply just, we think there's enough evidence that it warrants a trial. It is not a guilty. So Trump has been indicted in 4 separate cases, but that does not make him guilty. Okay. It simply, it just says, we think there is enough evidence to warrant a trial. And so now there's got to be trials on these, four different trials. So, and it's a lot easier to indict than to convict. Again, a conviction requires 12 unanimous jurors. An indictment is simply a much lower standard. Is there evidence of a crime? Is there a good chance that he committed this crime? Sure, indict him. The burden of proof is much higher, beyond reasonable doubt. She's got a mic over there. She was coming your way. Making Julia move here.
Scurrying.
Getting some steps in.
Sorry. I know with January 6th, like, people did die, like, not just police officers, but other people. Could families sue Trump if he is charged? Not with murder, but could he also be sued for that? Because I think there was a woman that was shot. There were the officers that died. There's someone else that also died as well. Could families seek repercussions for that?
Yes, and you don't need to actually, the criminal charges don't even matter. So for example, remember O.J. Simpson, right? He was actually acquitted of the murder of his ex-wife, but the family, his ex-wife's family actually, was it her boyfriend? I forgot whoever sued him in a civil court and lost $16 million or something like that. They won $16 million. So yeah, civil court and also the civil court has a lower burden of proof. So you can absolutely, I don't know. I know there is a lawsuit ongoing, but the problem is, I don't know if you're a federal employee and injured on the job, I'm not sure, I don't know enough. I'm not a lawyer, I don't play one on TV, so I'm not sure, I don't know enough if they have the right to sue because it was a workplace incident, if that makes sense. And I think the one, Ashley Babbitt, who was shot, she was trying to smash in her way to try to attack the members of Congress, and one of the agents, the Capitol Police, shot her, and she died. Again, her mom is actually, a Trumper as well, and so she's not going to sue Trump because she actually believes in him. So, and there was another guy that was trampled to death. I think he had a heart attack or something, and he fell down in the mob that was storming the Capitol, and he was stomped on, and he actually died being trampled to death as they were trying to push their way into the Capitol. So I don't know. I don't think they would sue because they're Trumpers. I don't think they would sue either. Go ahead, yeah.
But in the sense of that, I know they support Trump or what have you. Could they say, like, anyone in the family, like if the person were to have children and they were like, well, Trump incited this violence and made my mother so belligerent that she was killed? Like in civil court, you can sue for anything.
Yeah,
so,
you're probably right. The issue is if there's a split in the family, you would have, I think if the family is unified and said we want to sue Trump, but I suspect the family is probably not unified, and it makes a harder case. But I mean, yeah, you're probably right there. And I think there are some lawsuits, and I've forgotten what they were, but there were some January 6th lawsuits out there pending, but I forgot. I think actually Ashley Babbitt is suing, the woman who was shot trying to kill members of Congress. And so she remember, if you recall, she was, that you said that where the soldiers were screaming, well, there was another window that they actually did successfully smash through, and she was climbing through the window, and there were members of Congress on the other side, and she was reaching towards the members of Congress, and one of the security guards shot her and killed her, and she died from her wounds. And she's suing, that's a tough, the fact that she was trespassing, the fact that, she was threatening the lives of members of Congress. I just don't, it's possible and you could win through everything, but I think it would be a hard case for her, but I don't know. So, sorry, a lawyer would probably be better, more knowledgeable on that than I would be. Any other questions, comments? Okay, well, thanks for coming. Tomorrow and Wednesday. So tomorrow, again, I got 3 excellent panels. A panel on Moms Demand Action, the School to Prison Pipeline. I'm sorry, that's the two moms coming in. The 11:30 panel on School to Prison Pipeline, a fantastic panel. And then another panel at 1 o'clock on why unions are important. And then, of course, on Thursday. So thank you for coming. And we'll see you, hopefully I'll see you at some of these other events. Take care.